Welcome to Close to Home with Nicole Sullivan.
Hello and welcome to Close to Home with Nicole Sullivan. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're diving into one of life's most exciting yet often overwhelming experiences, the home buying process. Whether you're a first-time buyer or have gone through the process before, the legal side of buying a home can be confusing. And that's where Nicole comes in. In this episode, we'll walk you through the typical process of buying a home and how an attorney's legal services play a crucial role in making the experience smooth and lacking stress. Nicole, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. We'll try to eliminate stress.
And this episode's going to eliminate all the stresses of buying a home.
We'll make an effort.
So to get us started, can you walk us through the typical process of buying a home as it relates to kind of how your legal services play a role in making it a smoother process?
Sure. So most of the time, I'm not involved until you've found your perfect home, found your perfect property, whatever it may be that you're purchasing. It could be a commercial building, residential property, a lot that you want to build your dream home on, whatever it may be. I'm involved once you've gone under contract. Here in Mississippi, the contract is put together, the purchase and sale agreement. Once you're under contract, that contract is sent over to me. And then currently, at least, I have two closers. So I assign the contract to one of our two closers, and then our duties begin. So you've already found the property. That part of the stress or the excitement is over with. And now we are where you're probably doing a lot of waiting. So my job or our job at Coast Title is twofold in that, first of all, we run a title search to the property. And what that means is we have an abstractor pull the ownership records on the property for either 32 plus years if it's a residential property or 50 plus years if it's a commercial property. And what I mean by title search is we go back through the lineage of ownership through that time period. It could be ownership, it could be easements that have been placed on the property, it could be leases, back taxes, all of those things. We look through those records to make sure there are no what's called clouds on your title. And clouds are going to be things that affect ownership interest negatively. So if we find a cloud on your title, for example, there may be back taxes that are owed, and it wouldn't be your title as the buyer. It's technically the seller's title that we're looking into. But that's important for you as the buyer, because when you purchase the property, you want to make sure you're purchasing what's called the fee simple ownership to the property, which is 100% ownership in the property. You don't have anybody else that's going to come back and say, hey, I own that property, or hey, I have an interest in that property, or you owe me money because I've posted a lien on this property. You don't want that to come up. So you as the buyer, you are trusting us to look into the seller's ownership and past ownership to ensure that the title or the deed that they're transferring over to you is going to be free and clear, and you're not going to have any problems moving forward. So that's the first part of the process. We search title, we make sure nothing is outstanding, no issues have arisen. If there are issues, then we make sure to point those out to the seller. We explain to them what we can do to help fix them, how they can fix them, or if we need to get involved. Something that we handle here at our law firm is probate of estates. When people pass away, a lot of times that ends up being a cloud on title. So there may have been two joint owners. Let's say Kevin and Nicole owned a piece of property and the title is just in Kevin and Nicole's name, and there's no joint tenants with the right of survivorship language. So that means if I've passed away, we have to have probate of my estate in order for that seller. Let's say Kevin is our seller, in order for Kevin to transfer title over to you as the buyer. So that could be a title issue that comes up that we can help you resolve. And that comes up not often, but at least we are there to be able to help you resolve that. So that's the first part of our duties as it relates to the home buying process. The second part of that is we are your settlement agent for the process. And what I mean by settlement agent is we're really the core that brings all the parties together and brings you to the closing table. So we are the party that makes sure the lender is fully involved. We help put together the CD, which is the closing disclosure. We make sure everyone is paid appropriately, because all of the money for the transaction comes into my trust account, and then we pay everyone what they're owed. So let's say the purchase price on the property is $200,000 and you're getting a loan for $150,000. The lender sends us that money. You bring us the extra money that's owed. Then we allocate the money appropriately for, say, proration of taxes, the realtor's fees, the insurance cost, all of those things, the attorney's fees for having the title search. We take all the money into the trust account, pay everybody what they're owed, and then the proceeds that the seller receives, we then distribute them to that person. But that's what's called the settlement process. So we handle all of that. Also, if there are loan documents involved, we accumulate those, and then we explain those and present those to the buyers and the sellers at the closing table. So I push a lot of paper. Let's just say that. As a settlement agent, I push a lot of paper. But again, if we summarize my job and my duty as the title company, it would be twofold, with the title search, making sure there are no errors or clouds, and then also being the settlement agent that really just brings the whole transaction together and gets you to the closing table.
Title insurance. It's an often unfamiliar concept for many home buyers, and it can be really confusing. Can you explain what it is, why it's important, and how it protects the buyer and the lender?
Title insurance is difficult to explain because it's so many things that happen behind the scenes that you don't even realize we're doing and what it protects. So like I just went over as it relates to the title search, let's say there are some back taxes owed on the property, or there is a lien on the property that should have otherwise been found pursuant to public records. So let's say the seller had an IRS tax lien in the amount of $5,000 that we were supposed to pay at closing, because that was a cloud on title, and that was something that had to be eliminated prior to the buyer purchasing the property. When you purchase the property and you get title insurance, it's a one-time fee based on the amount of the property. So again, let's say you have a $2,000 or $200,000 property. The owner's title insurance amount covers the owner for any issues that may arise as it relates to title, for covered issues, and it will cover that buyer or the owner up to $200,000. Let's say the lender got a lender's policy. In my same example, it was a $150,000 loan. That lender's policy covers the amount of the loan in the amount of $150,000. So in this situation, there was a $5,000 lien that should have been paid. That is going to be taken care of through your title insurance. And you personally, as the owner, don't have to file a lawsuit against the IRS saying, that's not me, I don't own that, or I don't owe you that money, that was this person. We're basically ensuring to you that you're right, we should have found that, and that is a covered issue that we should have caught via public record. So we will handle that covered risk. So title insurance covers you and makes sure that you are acquiring what I mentioned before is fee simple ownership from the seller to the buyer. It covers anything from liens. It could be unfound easements that should have been in public record. It could be fraud. It could be a lot of different things. Let's say there was a second mortgage on the property that we didn't catch that was in land records that had been filed. We are very confident in the job that we do in our title searches, but this is just an extra bit of peace of mind for a buyer when they are making such a large investment, and usually the biggest investment of their life, and it's a very small fee. So title insurance is, like I said, it's typically associated with the purchase price of the home, and in Mississippi at least, it's approximately $4 per $1,000 of the purchase price. So if you think about that on most situations, I'm not doing the math in my head, but usually it's about $1,200 on a purchase about that size. I can pull out my calculator, but I don't think we need that.
I would have been very impressed. You
get the point. It's a very small investment to make to cover yourself on such a large investment. Many times we have lenders that may take off the owner's policy. And once I explain to the owner what they get for the money, they're like, oh, no, we want to make sure we get that. So it is, an owner's policy is what's called optional. But if you are getting a loan, it's not optional for the lender's policy. A lender's policy is required if you are getting a loan to purchase a property. But most of the time when you're purchasing a property and there's a lender's policy that is required, if you bundle that with the owner's policy at the same time, it's much cheaper to just bundle at the same time, because if you get it again later, it's basically double the cost. So it's a really, to me, it's smart. I always purchase title insurance. I know that's what I sell for a living, but I truly believe in it. And I'm not somebody that could sell something I didn't believe in. So a title insurance policy to me is one of the most important purchases when you purchase property, again, whatever the property is. Even if it's a lot for $5,000 or $1 million commercial building or a $500,000 home, it doesn't matter what it is. It's a very small investment to cover you and give you a great peace of mind as it relates to that large investment.
I told you earlier that my wife is a realtor, and I've definitely heard some stories about just like a lot of people nickel and dime in the home buying process, which is understandable. It's like you said, it's a huge process, but do you find that a lot of people are willing to kind of roll the dice on that and not purchase the title insurance?
Again, once I explain, so let's go back to this. Lender's title insurance is required. There are times when it comes down to a person may be having trouble, or the lender is trying to get their cash to close down as low as they can, to, let's say they only want their client, because they promised the client or the buyer that they're only going to have to bring, let's say, $5,000 to the closing table in order to close. Many times, because it's optional, the lender will indicate to us, hey, take off owner's title insurance. That's fine. I'm happy to do that. But when I get to the closing table, they have to sign a waiver stating that they agree that they're not going to take title insurance. Well, of course, I pull out a form giving them a waiver saying they don't want it, and I explain what it is. They have a moment of, wait, what? You're telling me it covers all of these things, and I don't have to worry about my ownership status for the time that I've owned it and even beyond my ownership. They say, no, let me write you a check now for the difference. I for sure want to get that. I do not have many people, once I explain what title insurance is, that they say, no thanks. I don't think I need that. I trust you. We also are humans, and there are errors that are made. We have not had any so far that I know of since I've opened Coast Title, knock on wood. Because again, we pride ourselves in being very efficient and very detail oriented. You have to be in this industry.
Sure.
So we work very hard to make sure titles are clear and all those questions are answered. But again, there are humans involved in this process. And when there are humans involved, at some point there will be an issue. But this protects you for those errors that we could potentially make, that we hope to never make.
What are some of the key legal documents that someone should be aware of that, when purchasing a home?
Most of the key documents that I like to go over most when we're in the closing process is going to be the deed. So the warranty deed, where the title is being transferred over from the seller to the buyer. I like to explain that more so to the buyer than even the seller, to ensure that, kind of like we've talked about on our past episodes on estate planning, I like to also talk to them about that at the closing table, on the type of tenancy that they are going to take from the seller, to see if they want it as joint tenants with the right of survivorship, if their names are correct, if they're taking title in the name of an LLC. All of that information, I make sure that's correct for the buyer. And then I hand that back over to the seller to sign. The next document that I think is very important to understand is the deed of trust, which is the document that you are signing for the bank that says you are pledging the property as collateral for the loan. You'll keep up the property. I say you'll make the payments, because if you don't pay, you don't stay. And it outlines the foreclosure process, and that if they don't pay for the property, then foreclosure proceedings could begin. And I kind of explain that process of, there could be deficiency judgments, what that means for them. So that's a super important document to go over. The promissory note is also another important document. It's where you are promising to repay the loan to the bank. Another one that we have the seller sign as the title company is what's called a gap indemnity. And it states that we check title to the property a week or so prior to the closing. But from the time we check title to the time of closing, they haven't done anything to affect title, meaning they haven't sold the property to somebody else. They haven't taken out a mortgage that hasn't been recorded. They haven't given an easement to somebody. There wasn't some kind of judgment from work done on the property that they haven't paid for. All of those things that could affect title. So they cover the gap in time from the time we check title to the time of closing to say, we'll cover any of those issues that come up because we didn't do those things. Mm-hmm. So that's what's called a gap indemnity. And then the closing disclosure, the CD as some call it, for both the buyer and seller, we like to go over those in depth because that's the money document. That's the one that says, again, here's the purchase price, here are all the debits and credits, and here's what you're ultimately bringing to the closing table to pay for this property, and here's what you're ultimately receiving as the seller. And probably the last document to me that's pretty important that I like to go over with the seller, actually one more, but the last one for the seller is the owner's and seller's affidavit. It says that there hasn't been any work done on the property that they haven't paid for. Someone could come and file a lien. They don't have any back taxes that they know about. They're not in violation of any zoning, ordinances, covenants, anything like that, at least to their knowledge. And they sign off on that. And that's another piece of coverage for the buyer and then us as the title company. But the last thing I want to go over that I had a little aha moment on was the acceptance agreement, which is super important that we have a document for. The realtors typically have their own document for. It says that all the terms of the contract have been met. So that purchase agreement where you first agreed to purchase the property, all the terms are in there. It says all the terms of the contract have been met. Everybody's in complete agreement. The buyer has inspected and accepted the property, meaning it's come in an as-is condition at this point. If there was anything that you wanted to point out, you should have had a walkthrough and pointed it out then, and we could have negotiated since that walkthrough. But at this point, the deal is done and you accept the property as it is. And then we prorated the taxes. So here in Mississippi, we pay taxes in arrears. So we prorate based on the date of closing. The seller gives credit to the buyer for the time that they've owned it. And at the end of the year, the buyer pays the full amount that's due. But those are really the main documents that we think of that are important at the closing table that I like to truly hit on to make sure everybody understands.
Is there one piece of advice from your experience that you would give to any first-time home buyers or people thinking about buying a home for the first time that might be listening?
Don't be overwhelmed. There are no stupid questions. We are happy to answer any questions you have. Get the title insurance, even if it's not put on your closing disclosure or your settlement statement by the lender. Make sure you are getting the title insurance and really just kind of breathe. This really is a super exciting process, and we're here to help make it go as smoothly as possible. Typically, every transaction is different. There are a lot of ups and downs and little hiccups along the way, but for the most part, we're here to make sure that it goes right, and there is never an issue, or we never have an issue with you calling, or we have a system called Qualia where you ask questions and we're happy to answer those anytime, any way we can.
I think that's great advice. Well, thanks for tuning in to Close to Home with Nicole Sullivan. To connect with Nicole and the team, visit sullivanlawfirmplc.com. And please like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review. Nicole, always great to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Kevin. Have a good day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.